But the picks and bans elude you no longer. Game number 3 about to start, and it will be Dobbos in that first pick spot. So now they have to try some things to try and consider, right? Is it worth banning the Aphrodite? Yes. Okay, there you go. No need to wax poetic about it. Ban it.
Well, the thing was, in game number 1, they did a throwaway ban of the Bologna. So now their throwaway ban is going to be of this Aphrodite, knowing that RBX is back in this game. They missed out in game number 1, so game 2 showing the true power of him and the healer composition that his team likes to run, doesn't want to deal with it.
And they also get a chance to ban the Merlin, as you said. That's part of the luxury of being first pick, is that you get that chance to sort of do the meta within the set bans, and Aphrodite certainly has become that. Xbalanque and King Arthur banned by Ricardo. That's another thing to point out, right? They let the Xbalanque through last game, and that definitely makes the job easier for Wolvie if he's having to sub into the Hunter spot to be able to play the best Hunter in the game right now, which is Xbalanque.
But surprisingly, Dobbos is going to be taking the Artio instead of the Achilles. A very early Artio, I would say. So this is definitely a bait where they want the Achilles to be run because they have a very specific counter against it.
That's what it seems like too. And remember, when Dobbos had this slot, they took the Achilles and the Bologna together. Maybe they think that Ricardo can't do it, and they're comfortable taking whichever one is left over, which in this case will be the Bologna, and then the Kernanos prioritized by Ricardo. So very surprising to see this god who's not particularly valued anymore like he was toward the beginning of Season 6.
That's true, with the changes to Runeforged Hammer, synergizing with that winner stance, getting the extra damage when a target is CC'd.
Yeah.
It works really well with Kernos specifically compared to any other Hunter, but it has a little bit of a fall off just because of the late game potential. Compared to the other Hunters, you want a little bit more damage coming out of that Hunter role.
That's right. It can be strong from early, but maybe not as much late as the Unbots comes through to round out Ricardo's first half. The interesting one here, though, is that Ratatoskr and Giannis have both been picked by Dobbos, and that is scary. Now between Fly and Colossal, you have a ton of rotational ability. They can get to any fight in a hurry, and suddenly they got the numbers advantage.
The global pressure is going to be felt for sure out of Ricardo, so you got to be a little bit worried about those rotations. So if you're on the side of Ricardo, you got to make sure Nate is prepared. He has to have the vision control, and he has to be looking for the counter ganks more than anything. Maybe even go for an early level 1 blink.
That could be interesting if he's the one that is either outside of the CC or the one initiating, then that could work. But if he's in trouble getting knocked up by this Ratatoskr, then he might miss it. So it's just a tough matchup to decide how they want to play specifically and get away from this aggression. As a couple of bans coming through, the Ares and the Jingwei, some eyes towards the dual lane for Ricardo, and then just all mid lane from Dobbos. They want to try and punish RBX, the Aphrodite, the Merlin, the Hera, the Isis. What are you going to play now?
Maybe Hell, honestly. Who knows? Maybe another healer specifically. I'm surprised that we haven't seen him play like the Chang'e maybe even to try to go for that kind of healing, because outside of Aphrodite being super defensive, you don't have that much CC. You have like a slow for the back off, whereas Chang'e has that huge potential waxing moon 5 players stun. But I think a lot of that came down to the Aphrodite having the secondary Aegis to deal with the Achilles in that game too.
Well, I consider the Uller the signature pick for Vaporish Coast, so this feels like my man saying we're going to win this one. At least he's projecting that kind of energy. Naja comes through as well. And if that's the dual lane between Switch and Coast, that's scary already for me. I mean, that's a ton of pressure between those two, a ton of kill potential. Keep your eyes on that dual lane if that's where everything goes as Nuwa rounds it out.
Nuwa is going to be good for peeling for herself, but other than that, early game could struggle. The Fire Shards, not that much damage in her kit, so you're looking for more damage coming out of the Hunbats.
If she's predicting when the ult's coming from the Rat, maybe then that's the idea, Fire Shards to try and get away, but he's got to be perfect on that to make this new wall work. Either way, a winner will be decided. Game number 3, Dobbos Disciples up against Team Ricardo. Aggro and Taco, take it away.
If you would have told me after game 1 that we're going to game 3 right now, I would have asked you who DC'd on Dobbos Disciples, but that really wasn't the case. In fact, it was a much better performance from Team Ricardo in game 2. But I think a lot of it was comp dependent, Taco, and I think that not only was it the Aphrodite, but their comp worked really, really well together, and I just don't know if I see it this time.
I think Ricardo also just did a much better job in Game 2 of exploiting the weaknesses in Dobbos' composition. Ricardo was a lot more proactive in terms of sending out Mr. Turtle to try and assist for early gank opportunities. And Dobbos Disciples, they've had enough of it because just like that, overpowered USB and Switch invading the jungle of Nate, and there's really nothing more frustrating as a jungler than losing your speed buff after having already used your cooldown to try and clear it.
Yeah, that's That's a tilter, for sure. Been there, Nate. I feel for you, man. That one hurts. You lose the purification beads, you lose the buff, you lose the golden XP, of course. Now, Chronic the Bros just misses on stealing away the blue as well, but good start so far for Dobbos Disciples.
Well, it's also the fact that Nate can't afford to stay on that side of the map because he can't look for his back harpies. There's no doubt that Switch and overpowered USB are going to be there. And you can't go to your blue buff right away because you're Humbots, and Humbots with an Achilles. Sure, Achilles can scrap, but the Monkey Man, not so much, especially when you're still stuck at level 1. And I would definitely favor buff confirmation to go the way of overpowered USB and Switch.
So now that this start, it's a risk for Switch and for overpowered USB, but they get away with it because they get the speed, they get the backs, they get the blue. The real risk now is for Vaporish Coast, is that he was alone in this lane. They lost the purple buff over there, but the red was still secured, it looks like, by Dobbos Disciples, as Colossal still fighting with Nate on this right-hand side. Has a level advantage, but pretty even trade if not Nate winning it.
If Colossal had been hit by that Sacred Monkey Toss, I think he might have even died. Because there would have been follow-up from Nate. I'm sure he would have chosen a teleport and looked for the in-hand. And if that had gotten Colossal low enough, I would not have been surprised in the slightest to see Nate continue to chase. I'm assuming Colossal still had that Acorn Blast on cooldown during that engagement, or being at level 3 might not have even chosen to take it.
Feels like the one you want to take, though. I mean, it's so much damage in the early game. It's actually your most damaging ability at level 1, though getting 2 points in the 2 feels pretty good at the same time. Can kind of go either way. But as I was saying, the risk was for Coast, but not feeling it now as he's going to jump in. Wolvie happy to stay and box him. Eventually, Wolvie will dash away, and good ring toss from Switch will again force Mr. Turtle and Wolvie back. No surprise to me that that Coast and Switch playing aggressively in this lane. Not only is it really good with their picks, but also their play style is very, very similar for them.
Seems to be the only focus, in fact, of dual lane, but Dobbos Disciples, aggressive as ever. Colossal still wanting to go in against Nate, but with that through space in time, 60-meter flying now trying to take a piece of the action, and he's only going to spot out Arabiax for the moment.
Arabiax there, able to get out of range of that portal. Fly drops the 3 and the 2, but still not enough damage to bring him down. Good attempt, though. That'll force Arabiax back to base pretty shortly, though I imagine that's where he wants to be, as Coast and Switch continuing their aggression on this left-hand side. But Nate on the way. Still only level 3, though, Taco. That start really did hurt him.
And Vapor is just a little unsuccessful with the axe connection. And being level 3, though, on the Humbots isn't the worst case scenario. I mean, it definitely hurts, but I think it also could have definitely been worse for the Monkey if Colosso had been a little bit more successful on some of those back Harpy invades. But Ricardo, Arabiax, and Mr. Turtle, even Chronic the Bros a fair bit, have all been trying to make assistance rotations for their jungler to help compensate for the fact that he's so underleveled and can't really defend buffs on his own.
Eventually, though, he'll hit level 5 and then be Hunbats and has one of the best ultimates in the game. There is that benefit to it, at least. Colossal already sitting at level 5, but he's basically out of mana, so once he clears his speed, he's going to have to go back to base pretty shortly afterwards. Fly's ultimate already been used once and nearly back up before Ribiax ever has the chance to pull the trigger on Fire Shards. Just now coming up. With Nate a little bit behind, are you looking... I imagine that it's on Chronic the Bros to get some pressure over here in the solo lane and set Ricardo up for some right side of the map success.
You can always correct me if you feel like I'm mistaken on this one, Aggro, but I feel like Chronic the Bros has had pressure in all 3 games in the solo lane so far. This is probably the first time, actually, where Overpowered USB has had something to say about it, and that's only because of these early invades.
Oh, great ultimate from Fly. That'll force Nate back. Colossal gonna dunk down. Chronic the Bros nowhere to go. He gets his Fatal Strike blocked, and the Fatal Strike was onto him all along. Colossal gets first blood for Dobbos Disciples, and there's that global map pressure in the identification. You're right, this is the first game that Overpowered USB has really had a lead, making it work for him so far. Fear No Evil gets beads away from Colossal. No blink for him, and Nate out of the way. Just a little bit off on that Acorn Blast is what sets Nate up for his survival.
It needed the stun to continue connecting with that flurry of Acorn after the fact, and that would have been, I think, the last little damage swing that would have given Colossal the pick there. But I agree, Chronic the Bros has definitely been running rampant in this whole lane up until Game 3, and it's got to be that start, but we'll get more on that later, because right now, Mr. Turtle is trying to get frisky in mid.
Plenty of damage, but Switch finds an ultimate of his own. Here comes USB as well on rotation, looking for a Ribiax who has those fire shards, gonna need them, and that's exactly where he's going, up into the sky. Mr. Turtle left on the ground with 4 to worry about. Dash coming up soon, great wild hunt that actually spreads everyone out, and Mr. Turtle almost out until Coast hits him with the long range hail of arrows and finally takes down the enemy support. Oh, by that time, Switch ended up taking a spill as well.
A little bit of tax on that pick for Dobbos Disciple, and Nate letting Dobbos Disciples hear it. At least for Coast, who is still hanging around in the mid lane there. Lots of spam taunts and labs being exchanged between these two teams, Aggro. And I know that competitive play is always a little bit of a mental game, but when you're in the losing spot and you're the one getting spam taunted and laughed, it does have an impact.
Fly looking for the one shot onto a Ribiax and just a little bit off the mark. Miss all the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, so living by that code.
Well, it was actually Michael Scott and then Wayne Gretzky.
No, it was Wayne Gretzky. It was Michael Scott quoting Wayne Gretzky, quoting Michael Scott.
I was gonna add on to that, but I was like, dude, we're actually watching a game right now.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on though. Colossal could have fooled him. He was a little bit off the mark with that ultimate. Eventually got a Ribiax anyways though. Just put himself in position to cut it off.
Wait till set 4.
Yeah, set 4 will be on.
See you at set 4, son.
That's right. That's how it always goes around here. We reach real high res hours eventually, no matter what.
For set 2, you know, well, we can let that one slide.
Keep it locked in a little bit more.
Colossal did not let RBX slide at all.
No, sticking around at half HP usually not a good way to end up surviving in the mid lane. No pen early on for Colossal. I feel like Crusher is usually almost always the first option for Ratatosker players, but instead going for the Blackthorn Hammer, I guess worried about the damage coming out of Chronic the Bros would potentially make me go for an HP option instead.
I think it's also, you do get a small 10% cooldown reduction depending on your mana, so yeah. Colossal as well does get a little bit of that CDR that a Ratatosker might want for that ultimate in particular. But I just like the idea of having 450 health. If you're trying to just play stupid aggressive into the enemy team, like we've seen Colossal, he's just been running at them, and for good reason. When you have that much health as an assassin, you can kind of afford to be a little bit more reckless. And just, it has, I think, definitely been impacting Mr. Turtle and Airbx as well, because they can't push up.
Speed buff invade successful for overpowered USB. Ultimate coming from Fly as well to help support. We've seen this quite a bit so far from Dobbos Disciples. Fly never scared to let that ultimate loose. Certainly a good sign for Giannis players, as Nate might be under siege here. Colossal gonna land this ultimate stun on the mark as well. Nate gonna jump away. Colossal will dash away. Blue buff looks like it was still secured though by Team Ricardo, so no harm, no foul for them.
You know what I find to be the craziest, though,
What's
so
that?
far, Aggro? The fact that there's no Aphrodite for Team Ricardo.
Yeah.
And yet, 60-meter fly felt like a Divine Second Ruin was warranted.
Yeah, on a god that applies it far worse than Zeus. I know. It's infuriating, isn't it? I'm losing my gourd over here over it. I've been like, you know that meme of the kid who's just like clenching real hard?
Kind of like Mr. Turtle probably was clenching when he caught that Ninja ultimate to the face, but it's Nate who's the one who's really got to be concerned. Portal. Beautiful escape pathway for Switch being set up there, courtesy of 60-meter fly. And he's out of there. Oh,
no,
just kidding.
Just not. Switch turning around to throw the ring toss is actually what ends up killing him from that point. If he just would have straight lined out of there, I think he's good to go, but a little bit of greed on the slow opportunity ends up costing him his life. Always feels good getting a 1 point in Fire Shards kill. That hot 100 damage.
The one that, like, you don't think is going to happen, but you're just like, may as well. Just
yeah.
why not? Don't really have anything to lose, and all the more to gain. AirBX with his second kill now, and having just finished off the Chronos Pen, and probably because of the bounty goal that he just received from Switch.
Yeah.
But I really... Fly's such an interesting individual, man, because on the one hand, I think he is nuts mechanically. Yeah. But on the other, you know, the guy builds the Divine Red second item here.
I mean, Divine's good against Terra. It's a good pickup. I just think it's almost never worth buying on Giannis. Unless you're, say, against like an Aphrodite comp. The ultimate comes through from Fly, provides a portal perfectly for Switch to get out and deal some relevant damage at the same time. There's those nuts mechanics you were talking about. Colossal off the mark, though, on that Acorn Blast. Fatal Strike going to be received by overpowered USB, and Wolvie coming all the way from duo lane gets himself a quick double kill on that Kernos rotation. Not a usual rotation 11 minutes in to get all the way by your own team's back Harpies, but certainly worth it now.
Unusual, but not unwarranted. Vaporish Coast not going to be able to match that rotation, just stays in the duo lane, continuing to farm, but it's important for Wolvie to be able to rotate there and punish Dobbos' Disciples for overextending their stay. It felt like Dobbos' Disciples was just way too deep for so long.
And Taco, if you really want anti-heal against the Terra in this game, you have a Rat who applies brawlers really well.
Blackthorn second item, though.
And now he's not going pen here either. It's going to be a Void Shield, which is kind of pen, but it's not
Void Shield third item, though. With the Blackthorn.
Taco, I can't. It's making me so upset.
I'm playing devil's advocate here because I like the expressions you're making on your face. This is why we need Caster Cam back, man.
It's true. Caster Cam was good. I didn't mind it at all. It's just like sometimes, you know, you sit and when you get a 40-minute game, you shouldn't have to think about how you're looking that whole time. I can retweet that, you know? If I want to sit here with my legs up, scratching my belly during the third Fire Giant dance, I should be allowed to do that without any repercussions. That's all I'm saying.
Well, there wouldn't be anything bad for you, as so much as it would be, you know.
People would just like make you be like, oh, look at that lazy bum aggro. I'd be like, come on, man. I don't deserve that. I should be able to do that without any sort of judgment.
You just don't want anybody to judge you.
That's right.
Or you could open them up. All 6-meter Fly, though, on the run right now, but portal straight into the clutches of AirBX. Overpowered USB made the rotation from solo lane, but as a lone Artio trying to punish this new Y, he's going to need some help, and he finds it thanks to Colossal.
AirBX had beads and ultimate, but just didn't expect that knockup coming from Colossal. Fatal Strike used for an escape. Lots of ultimates dumped into overpowered USB. Still alive until Mr. Turtle finally puts him down. Switch has one up in the sky. That's Nate, who's very, very low. Colossal finishes him with a quick dart in towards the jungle. Wolvie trying to keep that chase going. Even with that slow stance, not enough, though. It does force the beads out from that Ratatosker as Switch and Vaporish Coast still brawling in the mid lane. Coast loses his beads to a nice stun from Turtle as Axe just a bit outside.
I think Vaporish wanted to get the swing around first, but it didn't pull it off in time before actually hitting the fire. So, unfortunately for the young hunter, he's going to lose out on his purification beat. Still has that Aegis, though. Still can look to play somewhat aggressively as long as he doesn't have to worry about the control from Mr. Turtle. I have been really impressed as well with a lot of Mr. Turtle's monument placements. I think that they've been great at corralling Dobbos' Disciples all together to really allow the Fear No Evil to come out.
Yeah, Mr. Turtle's played pretty well, and Switch, on the other hand, I mean, he's found a lot of ultimates, but they haven't really been onto priority targets. He's missed a lot of ring bounces so far this game. I was expecting a little bit more out of this Naja so far.
I think it's also kind of tough, though, as an Naja, when you ult, even if you get a priority target ult, like onto Wolvie or AirBX, you just don't really have a whole lot that you can count on when you land. I mean, 6-meter Fly, he's got the Unstable Vortex, maybe a Portal. Vaporish Coast, he's got an Axe Stun, the Bladed Arrow, Hail of Arrow, but even then, the timing can be finicky with a lot of the follow-up abilities that Dobbos do have to offer.
Colossal into the ultimate. Chronic the Bros completely out of mana on a proxy farm. Is that good? Usually you need a couple extra abilities to get out of these sorts of situations, and I just don't think he's going to have it. Though Blue Buff certainly helping him out. Got a little bit of mana for combat dodge, but eventually he will go down. Overpowered USB there to assist as well.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that that was not worth it for Chronic the Bros, especially not when Ricardo are actually in a position that map pressure I don't think has really been majority established yet for either of these teams. And when you're dead for 30 seconds or so, this just makes it easy for Dobbos Disciples to grab solo lane pressure for themselves and look to try and confirm this Pyromancer. They're going to be spotted out there, however, by Nate, and that could pull in the rotation from Mr. Turtle and Era BX. Switch no one better, though, hoping to try and cut him off.
6-6, Dobbos Disciples up 1,000 gold. Very, very close game here in game number 3. Much more reminiscent of game 2. Game 1, if you missed it, was a 21 minute thrashing delivered by Dobbos Disciples. But since then, Team Ricardo has looked pretty good. Nate in a lot of trouble, has to use those purification beads. Ultimate was on the mark from Fly if it was just a second and a half earlier. So Nate escapes but loses the beads for it. Not too bad for Dobbos Disciples as Colossal uses his own purification beads. Both relics burned by Wolvie trying to secure that red buff on Team Ricardo's side of the map.
Now I want to see the reset. Once Colossal and Vaporishkos get back from base, I think it's time for Dobbos Disciples to take a look over towards this first Gold Fury because both the actives have been pulled from Wolvie. I think beads were just forced from Nate. That's already 2 priority targets for Ricardo that are relatively defenseless unless they have somebody to help peel for them. And I'm not certain that Chronic the Bros or Mr. Turtle can even help save them should Dobbos Disciples look for a full collapse. There's a lot of chase down potential. That is the one thing I can't take away from Dobbos Disciples. Not the greatest follow-up for this Najal, but tons of follow-up in terms of just finding Ricardo in the jungle.
RBX puts out a little bit of damage and reveals the entirety of Dobbos Disciples. Overpowered USB zoning pretty effectively as Colossal gonna take to the sky, going to help him out, but big whiff onto what could have been a great target in Wolvie. Now Overpowered USB in some trouble. Great Fear No Evil coming from Nate. Switch goes down alongside Overpowered USB. And Ricardo ending up on top of a fight that they just have no business winning, Taco.
Chronic the Bros knows exactly where to head after that. 60-meter fly getting run down by Nate, but
no way.
He's going to force him
Fade
back
away.
instead.
Oh, he hits it and nearly kills Mr. Turtle, but doesn't quite get the objective. Does force the reset, though. Actually going to head through. Unstable Vortex cleans up one as Nate fell to Vaporus on this left-hand side. Vaporus still in a bunch of trouble, but combat dodge already expended. Great ultimate from Fly. Ends up resetting the fight back towards Dobbos' favor.
You ever just do everything wrong in a team fight, aggro, and then that one guy in your team who's playing, oh, excuse me, this is actually you in this position, right? You're the guy that's playing Giannis.
Yeah, that's me.
That instead of aiming that through space and time at Nate, 60-meter fly goes for the Gold Fury, and that is just such a wild card ultimate. I'm not surprised that Ricardo were not expecting that.
Yeah, that was while moving, fade away from half court.
He could have followed it.
If he would have stolen the Gold Fury, I would have lost my damn mind. It would have been absurd. Instead, I mean, he still resets the Gold Fury, goes through, kills Mr. Turtle eventually. Fly really trying his best to keep this set in Dobbos Disciples' favor, and this is an important one for both of these teams. They're both looking up at Team Rival, and Team Rival has been undefeated so far in the record, so you can't afford to fall too far behind by losing games like this.
The reset alone, though, I mean, that could come back to haunt Ricardo. A moment in the game where I think Ricardo could have very clearly pulled themselves out in front of Dobbos Disciples. Now they're going to have to go back to this same Gold Fury dance that they were already doing one time before, except now Dobbos Disciples have very clear ward vision favoring over this objective, and not only that, but all of the relics are going to be available as well for Dobbos carries.
Chronic putting a bit of damage out on a Fly, but he's going to eat some in return. Rooted by Overpowered USB. This Fear No Evil, not quite as valuable, but Terra's Blessing there and gets some job done. Forces a reset, at least momentarily. Good ultimate coming from that Terra. A little bit of a miscommunication on where that ultimate was going from Colossal, but instead he's looking at Chronic the Bros, who's going to exit stage right. Vaporish Coast not looking to exit at all. No surprise from him. He's looking to chase down Nate, leaps after him as Chronic still under siege from Switch. Nate loses the Purification Beads, and Unstable Vortex gets it done for 60-meter fly. This is a good ultimate this time around from Switch. Burst damage there, double kill for 60-meter fly. But the entirety of Ricardo in that fog doesn't stop Coast, jumps in, gets the beads from Wolvie, and Colossal's gonna finish him. Overpowered USB still frontlining effectively as a tier 1 tower falls for Dobbos Disciples.
And it's just a one-by-one dominoes effect aggro. The members of Ricardo just continue to keep falling. Mr. Turtle's gonna go down fourth and foremost, but AirVX, unlike the rest of his team, still staying alive, hoping to clean up overpowered USB in the process, but instead might have just baited himself a little bit too deep, but did waste a decent amount of time there. All of Dobbos Disciples peeled off of that T2 tower even to help save the life of their RDO, but because it was a full, clean team wipe, Dobbos Disciples might just look to rush down this Fire Giant instead.
Nate's gonna be there with ultimate. That's gonna be a problem for them. Instead, it looks like Dobbo is going towards Gold Fury. I mean, look, Nate being there with ultimate is scary, but it's still just one, Taco. I mean, you've got 5 people. Is this really the right call?
I think they could have gone for Fire, but I'm not going to be upset that they're looking for the Gold Fury instead. It's a lot less likely that Nate's going to look to contest a Gold Fury in comparison to the Fire Giant. I think that's exactly why we saw Ricardo's jungler at his back Harpies. He automatically came out of base heading towards FG, probably to face check it just to make sure that if Dobbos Disciples were on it, then he could threaten the presence of the Fear No Evil. But without that monkey being present at the Gold Fury, Dobbos Disciples, they're not going to complain. They already got T1 tower in mid. That opens up a little bit more room for them to work with in mid, at least if they're trying to collapse onto AirBX. And now Dobbos Disciples still looking for another T1 tower in duo.
Wolvie, no relics available. He's got that dash, and it gets interrupted beautifully by Switch. Wild Hunt, a last-ditch effort as Coast looking to keep it going. Switch gonna do it, though, with a nice ultimate out of that Naja. 60-meter fly does get that kill and provide some portals to keep chasing down Nate. Coast up and over that wall as well, really hunting for this enemy jungler, but the blink in from USB will be the finishing blow.
USB also going to clean up that mid lane wave just to make sure that Dobbos Disciples continues to maintain creep pressure in both mid and duo. Chronic the Bros trying everything in his power to see if he can bring down Colossal or 60-meter fly, but he's just going to Fatal Strike into the middle of Nowheresville as Dobbos Disciples just surround him.
Yeah, a little short on that Fatal Strike there for Chronic the Bros, and it ends up costing him. No reason to back up now if you're Dobbos Disciples. Just keep this fight going. They've been ripping Ricardo limb from limb over the last 4 or so minutes, and now USB, AirVX may have to ult from this position. The USB is that far ahead, level 19. The stun good enough to actually get him out of danger, but the Gem of Isolation RDO, there's not a lot of ways to get away from that.
Pretty much none if you're New Wong. And AirVX, knowing better, just backs the base. Understands that this is not his fight to try and take or to try and win. He's going to have to wait until the rest of his team catches up a little bit more so in their own itemization and experience departments before trying to tango with Dobbos Disciples yet again. But the Pyromancer is going to be pulled now. No Gold Fear in the map means there's no reason for Dobbos Disciples to be anywhere near the duo lane right now. And the T2 tower has also been taken from duo, so even further reason for Dobbos Disciples to just continue looking at the Spire.
AirVX uses his ultimate. I think he saw the tree branch coming from Colossal's ult. Ricardo knows that makes him a lot more vulnerable, though, and that'll lead to a Fire Giant pull. Double knockup by FG, doing good work onto the bad tanking of Dobbos Disciples, and Ricardo coming in, trying to defend.
Switch is taking a decent amount of poke from the enhanced Fire Giants. Not as easy to bring down, especially since Vaporish doesn't have any crit-based items. He's all attack speed and pen on this Uller, so it's going to take some time for Dobbos Disciples to actually confirm the FG. I want to see Ricardo continue to pressure in lightly to Dobbos.
Absolutely.
That 6-man Fire Giant it can be the difference maker without a doubt, especially if Colossal and Switch are going to continue to knock themselves up.
And Fly is playing one of the worst DPS mages on objectives there is. Giannis does very, very little to these objectives, so you're right. I mean, this is... I don't even think it's worth Dobbos going for the Fire Giant at this point. It's enhanced. You've got a horrible composition to burn it. No Primal Furies under your belt. I mean, they don't really have a hope of getting it unless it's uncontested.
I think if anything, though, it's going to be a great way to kind of pincer maneuver Ricardo into the Fire Giant pit. I mean, if Dobbos Disciples are threatening the Enhanced Fire Giant, Ricardo are in a position now where they're not completely out of it, so they're going to want to contest that big team fighting objective, I would imagine. And if that's the case, then Dobbos could just look for picks elsewhere, and the FG is really just a fake right now. And
yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ricardo are probably suspecting of that as well, which is why they've been so wary when positioning around this Fire Giant. It's almost as if they're challenging Dobbos Disciples to actually pull it.
Yeah, I think that if I'm Dobbos Disciples, I'm trying to go for a tier 2 tower. Go Oni Fury and to tier 2 tower from here because, as I mentioned, your composition is just not well built to take a Fire Giant. And I think in Season 6, that's something that teams are going to start to draft around, basically, is how well we burn FG. This one just doesn't do it for Dobbos Disciples. They do a lot of other stuff pretty well, but that just isn't one of them. Nate takes a lot of damage. Nice hail of arrows, and Switch actually going to land the ultimate right away. Fly's ult going to be a bit late if it's going to follow off the CC perfectly, but he got stunned and sets up nicely for it. His snipe was right on time in that situation. Ariviax has to take to the sky as the dive is on for this new Wa. Colossal splits the uprights on that dash, and the minions actually body blocking nicely. Finally he gets him, but that does lock him down long enough for Chronic the Bros to get one. Chronic the Bros gets a second on that fatal strike, and Switch getting close to execute range, but not quite close enough. That will do it for that initial fight, but tier 2 tower still goes down for Dobbos Disciples.
Surprisingly enough, Vaporish Coast was not with the rest of his team on that dive. He was actually objective focused, continuing to chip away at that T2 tower while the entirety of Ricardo was distracted. Could have been a little bit cleaner from Dobbos, however, on the dive in general. Arabiax probably living a lot longer than what he should have. And I don't think Colossal has been super clean on this Ratatosker, but he's still getting the job done for the most part.
Oni Fury getting low. Reset, not there. Ricardo still get the objective, but now Chronic the Bros in a bad spot, walks right back into that unstable vortex, and Vaporish puts 20 on the board for Dobbos Disciples. But Ricardo do get the Oni Fury, and that will spread out Dobbos Disciples at least a little bit.
This could be the power play instance, though, that Dobbos Disciples needed if they wanted to try and take this Enhanced Fire Giant for themselves. With Chronic the Bros being out for another 40 seconds or so, he does have his teleport available on his respawn, but I'm uncertain as to whether or not he's going to elect to upgrade it for another 500 gold, or even if he has the 500 gold in hand right now, which I'd imagine he should after his team got Oni Fury, but still never know what solo laners choose to spend their gold on otherwise.
This is an awkward time, I think, to start this Fire Giant. I mean, Chronic the Bros is dead, sure, but Oni Fury waves are coming, as is Nate. Fly's already taking a lot of damage. Reset might be the call as Coast takes a ton of damage from that knock-up, and a great snipe off the ultimate from Switch. Eliminates Nate from the engagement before he even gets a chance to start it. Beautiful synergy there between Switch and Fly.
Look at Fly as well, still playing aggressively. But Chronic the Bros has made his way back out from base. Fly now on the retreat, and it's all about keeping Wolvie alive. But Mr. Turtle not having too many issues with that as the Terra.
Coast having to deal with Chronic on the back side. He's going to try and chase him out. In fact, jumping in. Fly gets his 7th in a row towards the top end of this team fight, and Coast really using that Aussie passive to its fullest, getting himself out of Fatal Strike range and forcing Chronic to take the exit towards the left. You already know Coast's Blink is jumping over for here. Chronic does have Blink. Gets stunned though, and good combo coming from Coast will eventually finish him off. So the rest of the fight has gone Dobbos Disciples' way equally on the right-hand side. They lost overpowered USB Taco, and that's just not enough, I don't think, if you're going to dissuade Dobbos Disciples from keeping the fight going.
It's taken Dobbos Disciples quite some time, though, to bring down Mr. Turtle. They got a wave in right lane that they could play off of if they want to. But the rest of Dobbos Disciples, or at least the 4 surviving members, seem to be a little bit more preoccupied with trying to finally bring down this enhanced Fire Giant. Nate is around, however, and he's got that Fear No Evil.
I don't think Fly realizes he's tanking. He has to back up. Nate has Blink and Ult and Beats. The benefit of insta-dying in the last team fight. Here comes that Fear No Evil. Gets some pretty good value, but not good enough. Even with help from Aribiax's ultimate, it's not enough to bring him down. And again, back towards Enhanced Fire Giant. Go Dobbos Disciples. This time, they should be A-okay as long as they don't mess up on the fire pools. Won't have a chance to do so because they bursted in time. All 5 members now with that buff as Overpowered USB had already respawned. Dobbos Disciples in the driver's seat at this point, 31 minutes in.
I think the main issue for Nate on that one was he just had no vision. Without any sort of ward indicator to let him know what that Fire Giant health is actually at, he's kind of just taken a gamble as to whether or not the time that he chooses to actually go in is going to be good enough for the Fear No Evil. I think by the time he face-checked FG, realized that it was nowhere near the death threshold range or steal range, really. It was just too little too late because by then you've exposed yourself. All of Dobbos Disciples knows exactly where you're at on the map, and they know that you don't have anybody that's going to be coming anytime soon to back you up. So I think Colossal definitely making the right decision there, just peeling off.
Ooh, Wolvie just escapes getting hit by the runaway train that was that through space and time, but doesn't mean the dive isn't on for him as Switch gonna land the ultimate directly onto the enemy hunter. Vaporish Coast cleans it up with a double kill, but a really good Fear No Evil nearly brings Coast down. Nate's overhand smash will finally take down the Star Hunter, but Colossal answers back with a quick flurry of acorns. 3 in a row now for Colossal. Losing Vaporish is a lot of this structure damage, Taco. Will they have enough to still get the Phoenix with ease?
All depends on how well Colossal and 60-meter Fly are able to actually poke into this Phoenix. Arabiax, however, just looking to aggress 60-meter Fly all by his lonesome. Chronic the Bro still alive on this backline, and with Colossal being forced to tank Phoenix, he's just not healthy enough for it.
USB is getting pretty low. Good stun, though, and big damage coming onto Aribiax. Takes him down quickly. Good stealth plays from him, though. Nice attempt. Fly getting low, portals himself and the opposition. Sets up for the stun, and that sets up for the deicide. Only for a second, though, as Mr. Turtle's already back on the map. Wolvie gonna be close behind him. Don't know that Dobbos can get a whole lot else, Taco, even with 2 members up. They're just, the Colossal and Fly are just so weak.
60-meter Fly with the 200 IQ outplay. If I get myself low enough, Chronic the Bros will undoubtedly try to all-in me. So
Yep.
portal at your feet.
Easy for me.
Easy on a strats.
That's the way to do it. Well done there by Fly, as you should expect from him by now. Now, the good news for Ricardo, Taco, is that they have a Phoenix exposed on the other side. If they were to wipe Dobbos Disciples 5-0, they might be able to run it down right side and win the game. Might.
It's not impossible, but is it realistic? It'll be tough. I think that the only way I see a full-on Dobbos Disciples deicide is if Nate can finally connect a Fear No Evil that sets his team up in position for the follow-up. But I don't think I've seen maybe 1, 2 multi-target Fear No Evils. I think the problem for Team Ricardo is that Nate has just been forced out of his ultimate more often than not in a rather defensive manner. And when you're having to use Fear No Evil as the start of your team fight engagement without your team knowing that it's going to be the start of your team fighting engagement, it's tough for Ricardo to really capitalize with anything after the fact.
Nate gonna blink in, trying to use it aggressively as you called for it, but he's still gonna keep the chase going onto Vaporish Coast, and Colossal cleans that up with ease through the Cosmos. Ultimate doesn't finish off Switch, but nearly brings down 3 different members of Dobbos Disciples. Chronic the Bros tries to get it going again. That Blink Fatal Strike doesn't get the job done. And now after a quick portal from 60-meter Fly, Switch is in a much better position to keep this fight going. Wolvie's had to handle Coast's push in the mid lane. These 2 frontliners doing what they can for Ricardo, but they just don't have enough damage to take down this team of Dobbos Disciples, even without the Fire Giant buff on them.
This is all that Dobbos Disciples were waiting for. Team Ricardo to start picking themselves apart. Everybody just so separated from each other. Wolvie's going to survive for a moment, but a portal's going to catch him out and kill him outright. Mr. Turtle now going to get Sash stunned and overpowered USB, hoping to connect the root. Vapor's Coast and 60-meter fly, not even on the Phoenix. They're on this Terra.
Turtle getting lower, but so is the Titan. Colossal seems a little bit more interested in the kills. Really thought he was going to go for the Titan there. Now, maybe we could see some Titan focus from Dobbos Disciples, but Nate has respawned. Ultimate coming up for him shortly, but Titan's already down to half HP. Jump in from Vapor's Coast, looking for the one-on-one onto Nate. He's going to find it, and Dobbos Disciples are going to find the game. Takes them 3, but they get the game over Team Ricardo 36-12 in 36 minutes.
And it felt a little bit shaky, I think, at the start for Dobbos Disciples, but ultimately, Dobbos Disciples able to maintain their team composure a lot better as the engagements kept happening more and more in the mid to late game. I just don't really think that Ricardo were really able to benefit off of those Fear No Evils. It was just tough for the team, I think, to find any openings.
That first pick, RDO, ended up playing pretty well for overpowered USB, but Fly's pretty good at Giannis. Who knew? Me. I did. Taco knew too. Finch and Tolly probably knew too. We'll ask him on the desk.
Yeah, Flash is good at Smite in general, but yeah, definitely Giannis too. Another big win here for Dobbos Disciples. Maybe this is one they would have expected to get into, I think, especially if they want to challenge Rival. Yeah. But the important thing is that they get the dub in the end. And as much as I think Fly's play was good, for me, this was all Colossal, man. 12, 2, and 16 on this Ratatosker.
Oh, yeah.
That is an insane amount that he was a part of this team and what they were trying to do.
It was the global pressure. It wasn't just him specifically on the Ratatosker. Also Fly playing the Giannis, were able to ping pong from any side of the map. A lot of pressure onto Nate that struggled quite heavily on the team fighting Hunt Bats. A good idea to kind of camp out this Achilles with a good rotation from Switch on the Naja as well.
That's right. It was Colossal's pressure, but Fly was very accurate on a lot of the through space and times too. That first blood you just saw, that one was set up by Fly hitting a 2-man through space and time. He found a couple of picks with that as well, but he did this, but Colossal, this exact type of thing all game long. He was hovering up in the air. He was forcing Ricardo to be about when they chose to engage and when they chose to try and take fights. He just made life hard on them with this Ratatosker. It's part of what they want.
And it wasn't just him and Fly also being aggressive and making the flashy highlight plays. Vapor's Coast on the Uller did a lot of damage specifically that game, synergizing very well with Switch on the Naja.
That's right. Uller, a signature pick for Vapor's Coast, and he's showing you why. 9-1 and 15 seems pretty darn good to me. 28k damage out of your Hunter as well. You'll take it every time. But just as well as I think Colossal set up for everyone else, so did Switch, man. You mentioned him just now. His play on this Naja was also absurd. He was nearly a part of almost every kill. He was also controlling the fight, landing all these sashes, ulting the right targets. And the person who I think suffered the most from all of this out of everyone was Nate on this in bots. He never really got a time to get comfortable, was never ahead, wasn't able to find the ultimates he wanted. When your team is behind, you can't be patient with your cooldowns.
And that's true. And also that came down to the RDO locking down Nate quite heavily. Couldn't really get out of danger there. A great first pick coming for the RDO solo lane for overpowered USB, but specifically also it was interesting to see Ricardo lock in the Terra into the RDO, knowing that the cripple counters essentially what this Terra wants to do. So it was kind of rough around the edges in terms of the compositions. You look at it across the board, there's more single target focus between the Uller Naja, more team fighting presence between the Terra Hunbats, but Ricardo got picked off too early, too quickly, gave more momentum for Dobbos.
Even with a bit of an early game focus, Dobbos Disciple grabbed that win. Let's take a look at the standings. I want to see how all these teams are shaping up. And I do want to give a shout out to Ricardo as well. They never had Tylern in this game. They had to play the very first game with Wolvie and with a sub in the Hunter position too. So this wasn't them at their full strength, and they still looked good up against a very strong Dobbos team. So I want to give them credit, but that's a win Dobbos much needed. If they want to catch up to Rival, they're going to be perfect the rest of the split.
That's right. A little bit of improvement from Ricardo, considering that this is their third rematch in weeks 1 and 5. Ricardo lost both of those sets 0-2, but Dobbos Disciple now getting that victory under themselves needs to find even more against Rival.
That's right. If they want to catch back up, it's a difficult hill for them to try and climb, but that's only the European region. We still have plenty more North American coming at you. We got PS4 and Xbox still on the docket in that region. So go ahead and get ready, whatever you got to do to prep, then get right back here for some more console.